Hey then everyone, Juan Romero here from SwitchWatch and welcome to my review of Oddworld Munch's Oddysee on the Nintendo Switch. First launched on the Xbox in 2001, it was one of the system's launch title games and I remember it fondly even though it was over 19 years ago. Where has the time gone? I was delighted to be reacquainted, but does it still hold up? And most importantly, is it worth your hard-earned cash? Let's find out and break it down. Now I'm going to start with the story here. One of the things I did like about this game, even back then, is how the story is implemented. Here in this game there is a nice way of catching up through the whole backstory if you want to, with a number of cutscenes which by today's standards now look old and are in the old 4:3 aspect ratio. I was however delighted that it was here. It's a nice bit of fan service and a good way of catching up if you've not played previous iterations. Here we meet Munch, who was swimming with many friends and family in the sea until they all got caught by nets and hunted to almost extinction, only for himself to get trapped on land in a scrab trap, taken away by scientists and fitted with an alien device into his skull. As you make your escape, you'll team up with Abe and embark on an adventure for Munch to bring back his species and for Abe to save his Mudokan friends. Let's talk about the gameplay then. I've said it many times, but I loved the first installments of the Oddworld franchise, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that it was a 2D platformer with puzzle elements. Had some very cool things at the time that you could do, like being able to possess enemies for one, only now in a more expansive environment when it's 3D of course. The transition to 3D at the time was a little bit of a risk and one I wasn't massively fond of at first, but I guess the franchise had to move with the times, and the Xbox launching with its new hardware and this launch title game had people excited about the future potential. There were only a few platformers in my view though that have done the 3D thing justice, and they're hard to get right, with the camera being a constant pain in the backside. With this game, the issues of the time are still present, even though it's the HD version and it's been remastered. Not to say it's not a fun time, because it has some very good moments. Now, if you've played previous installments, then many of the things you could do before, you can do here, such as solving puzzles using your Mudokan friends when controlling Abe, and of course being able to release a good fart at the press of a button. That always sends me off into raptures of laughter. One thing I did notice though was the controls never felt quite as good in 3D, as Abe and Munch feel okay to control, but it's not as tight as you want, even though the controls were a little bit improved in this HD version. It feels decent to play in handheld, and there are a number of control options like inverting the camera if you do so desire. You'll be commanding Abe's friends to come along, stay in a certain place while you rescue other friends from their meditative-like states, and commanding them to get to work by having to practice meditation on certain spots, all together to open doors. All at the press of a few buttons assigned for differing voice commands. Again, coming back to those controls, some buttons are used for multiple purposes, such as pressing a button to pick up a Mudokan and throw them, or jumping that leads to frustration because they're used for the same thing. For example, when you have to pick up one of your Mudokan friends to throw them over rocks, you end up jumping instead, unless you place Abe in the right place. So that can lead to a few issues. There are multiple little control issues like this, which over time do get on your nerves, as well as having to get all of those Mudokans in the right place to perform those certain actions. Now you'll have to perform a few platforming parts in the levels. There's nothing ever too challenging or taxing, but it is a game you cannot help but feel has not aged the best, even with the HD revamp, which actually came around 8 or 9 years ago. On the other side of things though, you also get to control Munch, who can hop and swim quite quickly when required. Drinking an espresso can make him travel really quick to avoid enemies, and using the alien implemented instrument allows you to transmit a bit of electricity to activate your furry little friends' cages so you can rescue them from being experimented on. You can even set them to attack the nasty scientists, and they are vicious little suckers, and I enjoy this part of the game, I think a little bit more than the A parts, to be honest. When both are brought together, then the game changes slightly, where you'll need to use both of their skills to get through the levels. None of the puzzles or levels are especially difficult here. or as well developed as they could have been, but it's all rather enjoyable to be fair, and I enjoyed my 12 hours with it again, just as I did all those years ago, little annoyances aside, as mentioned already. For the time, this was a very accomplished game, especially in the audio department where cutscenes were all voiced.
Now, I can't find anybody. My name is Munch, and I've been singing for 'em ever since. But nobody sings back. Until last night.
And of course in game, when speaking as Abe using certain commands are all voiced too, and while the repetition can get a little tiresome of hearing the same "Hi Abe," I still appreciated that it was here and the NPCs that talk you through the levels and give you those little tutorial sound bites. Found that each of the worlds had more of an atmosphere, ambience attached to them more than any sort of backing music. But again, it was fine for the time. And remember, it's a 19-year-old game. Although this is the HD version which was remastered, it did include some newer sound effects. Visuals and performance-wise, it's not all good news. Although this version did include higher models and textures and even more fluid controls, which is still not perfect, the game still shows its age. Honestly, it does not look too out of place with some of the games on the Nintendo Switch which have been ported these days. I don't mind the visuals, which look a little outdated, and unfortunately, in my view, 3D games of this era do not age as well as the 2D ones. The game, in my opinion, never reached the heights of the style that the previous versions had. My bigger concern though is why the game stutters at times. Now, I bought a brand new Switch recently, cleared the cache, cleared all of the games off my Switch, archiving them all, because I was beginning to think that my Switch was the issue with the amount of performance issues I've had to deal with across some of the reviews I've had to do lately. I'll keep saying it, there are no excuses for a game to be ported, which is this old, to have any sort of performance issues really, and you will notice that there are some stutters. It's not the end of the world, but it's a shame, and performance issues is not something I want to be talking about on games like this, because a minimum expectation is for them to at least run well on hardware, which this game should not be really pushing at all. Also, if you do buy this, remember to save your game manually. I lost 5 hours of gameplay because I just thought the game would save automatically, but it didn't. Value wise, if you order this game before the 26th of May, you'll be paying around $30 for our American friends for a digital copy, and after that it shoots up to $45. Now for me that's just too expensive. In the UK you're looking at $17.99, but then that jumps to £26.99. And in euros, it'll be $19.99, which jumps to almost €30. So if you want this game cheaper, you'll need to be quick on the button. Otherwise, I would advise you wait for a sale, as you can even pick this up on the Vita for about £7 digitally. If portability is the key reason for buying this and you have a Vita to hand, then it can be cheaper. Now, if you really want it on your Switch, then unfortunately, I think the price is a little high, even with the pre-purchase discounts. In terms of my verdict, I think it's great that the Oddworld franchise is being ported to the Switch. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath was a very good start, and Munch's Oddysee is nice to see, with a decent story which you do get invested in, as the games have always had great bits of humour and of course sadness. While not my favourite out of the franchise, I still had fun revisiting the past. There are issues which stop this from being a great game, like clumsy controls at times, stutters in the frame rate, and quite an expensive entry price for a game which is now almost 2 decades old. Worth a visit though if you can get it at the right price. A 7 out of 10. Check out our review of Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, which was a better experience in our opinion. You can watch Jordan's review on it here, and we hope to see some of the Oddworld titles coming to the Switch soon. Now, if you're new here, then don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss our weekend line of upcoming Switch games for next week. Bargains you cannot miss on Sunday, and all physicals coming to the Switch in the community spotlight on Monday with your host Jordan. Look forward to seeing you on there. I'll put some of those videos up above now so you can get a flavour of what that's all about. My name's Juan from SwitchWatch. Take care everyone, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one.